That's a nice picture on the 3-mile plan, isn't it?
I know, I like that picture a lot.
Looks kind of like today. One more snow then.
So,
Anybody-
more snow.
Say you're not coming? No,
I didn't hear from
I
anybody.
didn't.
Uchi had said that she might attend remotely because she wasn't feeling well,
I
but
don't know.
that was yesterday, so who knows? I haven't seen her join though, so.
I don't have to wear Duke in the comment.
No.
I swear I saw Kim. When did we meet last? October?
October, yeah.
Oh, I guess it's not that.
2 months off, you know, for the holidays.
Yeah.
Okay. Appreciate it.
I was gone most of the month of October. Did 3 weeks in Europe.
Where'd you go?
Nice.
Everywhere from Paris out to the coast to France to Normandy. That was one of the coolest things. Have you ever gone to Normandy? It was real heartfelt. I didn't think it would be, you know, and you were just like, wow, it was pretty awesome, actually. Yeah.
That's cool.
And then we went back to Paris, you know, went around France, and then we decided, let's take the Eurostar to London. And it's like, I don't know if you guys have ever been to London,
I was just there for Christmas.
not a fan. Did you like
I like
it?
London.
I liked it because my cousin lives there now, so
Okay.
he took me to like he said he just treated his family like going on dates every day, so we
Yeah.
just did a million things.
Yeah. I think if you have somebody and they're showing you around and all that, that'd be different, but you know, I don't know. It was too hectic, too loud, so many people. I liked Paris way a lot better, but yeah.
We did the Churchill War Rooms where they they conducted World War II under the government building. It was really cool.
We didn't do that, but my cousin stayed like 5 days after I left and she went to that.
It's
Said
really,
It
like-
was awesome.
When they won the war, they got up and left everything exactly as it was, like even the chairs are the same chairs.
Isn't it where all
they
the
sat in.
tombs are too?
No,
No.
it's kind of
That's
close
a
to
different-
Buckingham Palace.
Okay,
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
so
like
we
right around
went-
the corner from Buckingham House.
Yeah.
okay,
We did
so
it
we
last
went
year.
right by it
It's
probably.
really cool.
Yeah.
Like if you ever go back, that's worth doing.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, we walked and walked and walked. We stayed in the Hyde Park, Kensington
That's where
area.
we stayed.
Yeah,
Yeah, we stayed right at the High Street Kensington Tube Station
okay. Yeah, I think we were right by that too.
at a Holiday Inn.
No.
Room number 210?
Yeah. I mean, it was cool, but it's so expensive there.
Oh, yeah, I like how everything's just with the phone tap to pay. I
Yeah,
didn't take my wallet anywhere. It was really cool.
I just thought it was so much more expensive than Paris. Cause she lived in Paris before and I
Very
could,
expensive.
I didn't think Paris was that expensive.
It's not.
It's not, right, okay. London was way more, yeah. Anyway, okay, cool, we have a form.
Glad you caught it.
Huh?
Glad you caught it.
Yeah. Okay, are you turning this on?
Yes, we're good to go.
Okay.
We're live. And Uchi is on the computer and so is Duke, the CUP, so we're good to go.
I should take my phone out so I can see the clock. Okay, we'll call to order the meeting of January 8th, Thursday, January 8th, 2026 at 6:01 PM. Roll call.
Chuck Howard,
Present?
Kent Slingmaker,
Present.
Caitlin Maxwell. Here. Vice Chair Ursula Cruzaleggy. Here. Chair Cindy Olson.
Here.
Alternate Jefferson Litch.
Here.
Alternate Judy Murphy. Here. Thank you.
How everybody's here. This is
It's been a while.
a long time, yeah. Yeah, approval of the agenda. I need a motion.
Motion to approve the agenda of January 8th, 2026.
Seconded.
All those in favor, yes.
Yeah.
Opposed, no? Okay, motion passes. Open for public comment. We have nobody in the audience. Anybody online?
Nope, nobody online.
Okay, any conflicts of interest on the posted agenda? No conflicts of interest. Okay, approval of the minutes of October 2nd, 2025. Need a motion.
Move to approve the minutes from October 2nd.
I'll second.
Okay, any corrections? Anything? Uchi?
Yeah.
No. I know, it's like she usually sees them. I didn't see any. Okay, all those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Yes. Opposed? No, motion carries. Okay, general staff updates. Gosh, we're cruising right along.
Sure, yeah, so I had put some just like random statistics and data and things from the year in the packet, so if anyone has questions on that, let me know. I talked to Judy earlier today about some things, so I don't know if you have any follow-up questions. But I would say it doesn't look like that much went on, like 10 planning cases, 120 permits, but a lot, building permits, but a lot of those are like furnaces and re-roofs and things like that, but it definitely takes up plenty of time. So, it's going pretty well, I would say. One update that was not in the packet, that America 250 Colorado 150 grant that we applied for, that would be like a digital tour of the city sort of thing. We did get that grant. We found out just this week. So that's $25,000 to kind of create this kind of like digital historic tour that will have photos and some videos and information on a bunch of sites around town. And should be online in time for like 4th of July and those celebrations. It was cool. So we're working on that.
Who puts that together?
Well, I applied for it with Sadie from Business Community Promotions, and we're going to put it on the Visit Idaho Springs website, which Kent has been critical at putting together. So once we kind of have this officially funded, we will work with the Historic Society and the Business Community Promotions and some photography people, videography people to put it all together. Which is neat. And the other update I have is that Kent, your seat is expiring next month. And so if you'd like to continue on the board, you'll have to just get a written notice to Wonder that you'd like to be reappointed.
Okay.
Everyone else is good for at least another year. Chuck, you'll be next year, and everyone else is 2028 or 2029, so. That's it for me, unless anyone has questions about anything going on.
Any updates on the 4 points?
That is anticipated to start getting like conditional COs in the next couple of months. I'd say by maybe April. The thing that they're farthest out on, which makes sense, is landscaping because it's winter. So they'll probably have the first building, which is the furthest east building, ready to occupy in the next 2 months, I'd say. But then they won't be able to get in final landscaping and things like that until they're kind of ready to open the other buildings. So that's moving forward, and they've been working with the state on that that equity funding award, which deed restricted them to a 90% average median income rental rate. Last I heard, that wasn't yet finalized, but they're just going through underwriting or whatever it is with the Division of Housing, so things are looking pretty good there.
Okay, any other questions for Dylan? Okay, new business. Do you wanna take that?
Oh, sure, yeah, so this is in relation to the CUP that was approved, conditional use permit in spring of last year, and Duke Bradford, who was the applicant on that, is here tonight virtually to meet the condition from approval, which is that prior to commencement of operations in 2026, we would do a compliance review at a meeting to make sure that requirements and conditions are continuing to be met, and it's not a formal hearing or anything like that, it's just a review and discussion. I brought this to the fire authorities, the police department, to see if there's any issues. They didn't have any concerns. The one concern that I had heard from a couple of residents, and Uchi brought it to my attention, was that there's been some speeding in the vicinity of the park, and that, you know, I guess you can't necessarily prove, I suppose, that it's a rafter or anyone else. But that's something that we as a city should continue to monitor, and if there is anything the applicant can do to, you know, just make sure that once people move on, that everyone realizes it is like a shared use area, it's a park space, it's walking trail, all of that, then I think that would be quite good for 2026. But fire authority didn't have any issues, police didn't have any issues, EMS had no concerns, so as far as I'm concerned, it went pretty well and looks fine going into the 2026 season. But like I said, Duke's online and should be able to unmute and all of that, and I think we'll just open it up to questions and comments and all of that.
Didn't you just have the one concern on item 15? Get completed?
Oh, that is true, yeah, so they started operating, they built some wooden decks that were like camping platforms, and then still don't quite have final so basically they can't use them until final inspections are done, but since it's probably not starting operation until April, hopefully that'll be done by then. But
So will you review it again before April? Like, you don't have to bring it back to us again, right?
that's what I would say, unless the commission has
Yeah.
concerns about that, but that was the only
That's-
thing that was sort of hanging out there from the conditions.
I guess my only thought is that they should complete item 15 for your review to approve it for the following year. Would you guys agree? Yeah. Does Duke have anything? I don't see.
Yeah, we're fine, perfectly fine with that. I think we've gotten all the work done and the engineers and everything. So we're just hooking up with the inspectors. So I think we've gotten them their documents. So that's perfectly reasonable to, make that contingent on us getting that in compliance. We'll also look at a slowdown sign too. That's a little concerning around the park, especially with kids and stuff. So I don't know if it was us or not, but we'll maybe look to get a slow sign and remind people that, there are kids in that area.
Well, and city staff like myself and Ed can work with you on that as well, because I went down there and we don't really have any speed limit signs or anything in that vicinity, or any like share the road or any sort of signage, so there might be some improvements that the city should make in consultation with the rec district as well. Because there's a lot of kids around, and with the success of the skate park, now there's a ton of people just around all the time.
It's just gonna grow with the expansion of everything else that's going in there, so hopefully it'll cover the city that.
Okay, so I think we all agree on that. So Duke, the only thing is that item 15, and then work with Dylan on that.
Okay, that sounds great. Thank you, council.
Okay. 3 mile plan.
All right, so prior to 2025, we had not really updated the 3 mile plan in about 15 years, which went against state requirements. And so we're supposed to update it every year. There really were no changes between last year and this year. We did do one annexation, which was the 839 Colorado 103, just near the cemetery there, and that's planned for senior housing. But given that that's directly adjacent to city limits, there was no change to the map or area. And there's not been any changes to infrastructure anywhere in the city really that would have an impact on future annexations. So other than updating some dates in the plan, I have no changes to it. So what I'm recommending is that we make a motion that city council just approve this updated plan for 2026, and then we'll do the same thing next year and every year after that.
Is there a way to change that? Why is it every year?
And it's just a state statute requirement, like it's in the revised statutes, and so it's, I think it just forces municipalities to stay on top of considering infrastructure improvements, but there again, there hasn't been any changes, so I would say one change that might happen next year is we're proposing to do the first phase of the water line replacement going up 103. So that will be a much better water line. And so next year I will have to consider, what changes. Like, does that make it more suitable for annexation? If so, then maybe there are substantive changes, but in general, it can just be like a 5-minute resolution every year, I would say.
Okay, just so it doesn't get forgotten.
Right.
Like it has, yeah.
Yeah, because there were quite a lot of changes between 2008 and 2025, so.
Amazing it was that long ago, God. Okay, so do we have a motion? It's on page 14.
Make a motion to recommend that the Idaho Springs City Council approve resolution number 2, series 2026. A resolution adopting the Idaho Springs 3-mile area plan for 2026.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor, yes?
Yes.
Opposed? No, motion carries.
Not all my words go together yet.
Nailed it.
Resolution. Okay, old business.
I don't have any old business to.
Okay, so anything else? Anybody have anything? Okay, we'll adjourn the meeting at 6:15 p.m.
For the record.
and go into a work session.
Oh. Nice seeing you.
It was nice seeing you.
It was nice seeing you.
So nice to see you.
Just like a simple one-liner saying we're like a full letter. Thing.
I mean, there's no rules,
Okay, there.
it's good.
Yes,
Put it
ma'am.
in
Will do. Thank you.
Well, it's short and easy.
Yeah, thank you.
Yes.
Like it was last time.
It was.
Yeah.
there. Me again. No.
There will be some longer meetings, I'm
Whenever
sure.
there's red
Please
words,
take this
those-
as my
I
letter.
will not
for the-
enjoy your dinner.
That's all I need.
Bye-bye, Wendell.
Have a nice weekend.
All right, well, let's see if we can keep the work session short as well. So this first item, potential code amendment, if folks are interested, we bring this back as a potential ordinance in February or March. This was an idea from the mayor that Andy and the mayor asked me to look into, and it's about parking space minimum widths. Right now, our parking space width is 9 feet required, and so that means that any parking space that we produce needs to be 9 feet wide, and any private parking space has to be 9 feet wide. So the idea behind this would be to reduce it by 6 inches to 8.5 feet. And there is some precedence to that. I, looked at about 20 communities around the state, and there are quite a number that have 8.5 feet width, so it's not totally unheard of. But what it would do is twofold. One would be we could get just in the back lots alone, at least another 10 spaces or so just through restriping, which parking is such a premium in the city, that's sort of just low hanging fruit. The second thing it would do is reduce required parking space widths on private developments. So if someone's looking to do a full redevelopment and needs 50 parking spaces, those 50 parking spaces will take up less space. There could be less open space or less impervious surface space needed. You can conserve more as open space, or you could build an additional housing unit, or you could just do that parking. And so based on what I have reviewed, I don't see any reason why I don't see any negatives behind it, other than there are some very large trucks on the road these days that probably already have a hard time fitting in a 9-foot space. And It only gets worse if you reduce it further, but,
When we did around the rec center, I thought we reduced those when there was something about the parking there, because then they were gonna have to use the football field. But we reduced something in the size of parking, I thought, and the length, and maybe it was on the north side of the building.
they are slightly smaller, kind of all around the building. That is true. I hadn't
Uh-huh.
noticed that, I guess, or I didn't see anything on that, but I can look into that.
Yeah,
Maybe
it
there's just like
was.
a variance or something.
Yeah, it was something that we allowed to do so they could come up with enough parking around there.
Hmm.
And then I thought we did something down on Colorado Boulevard on the east end also. Where are those narrower also? The pull-in ones.
Hmm. Well, that I don't know either. I know we did approve a variance to allow smaller spaces with the Habitat project, which is private parking, of course, but they essentially got I believe it was an 8-foot width. But those are private, so if someone, you're not potentially causing issues with the guy next door, parks next door, but I can look into East End as well. With reductions. We
I'm
do
not
have-
totally opposed to it. I personally don't like it.
I'm totally for it. I think it's a great
Just
idea.
with having your people dinging your car all the time. So that's where I have a hard time with it, is you're gonna cram more people in and then more people get the cars dinged.
When
And that
people
to
ask
me,
for parking,
I
that's the
find
number one
annoying.
thing that people ask for around, and this is a way to do it without more space. Makes sense to me.
and then we added the city lot over there. That added how many spots?
That was 51 spaces. I
Wow.
probably could have added
That's a lot.
another.
I
If
didn't
they were
realize that many
slightly,
either.
if they're 6 inches thinner, you might have gotten another 1 or 2, but there are 51 spaces.
Wow.
And when we had that community conversation at Tommyknocker, it was like in October maybe or November. People were not very, they were still like. well,
I know,
what's that
I
gonna
was
do? We're not
there.
gonna walk, people aren't gonna walk 1 block to Minor Street from there, but like.
Tourists will.
It is pretty,
Mhm.
it is kind of perfectly situated between the east end and the west end, and
I
it's
would
right
think-
on the rec path.
I would think business would want their employees to maybe park there.
And that is a good idea and something we should think about in general, because like we did some math, and on a busy weekend, you could have 100 parking spaces in the back taken just by employees.
Right.
And so if you can move them out of those lots and park them over there, that's 50 new spaces that go towards people who are paying to
Mhm.
frequent businesses. So
But
that
that's-
maybe is actually.
But that's up to the businesses too, to want to do it. I mean, you can't tell them they have to, but you would think you would encourage your employee. I would, if I owned one, I'd say, hey, you guys park over there. I would. Everybody needs exercise. They should walk.
Yeah, well, and to be fair, to walk to like the businesses on this block, it's probably closer to walk from
Mhm.
there to Pickaxe than it would be to walk from where the parking structure could one day be to Pickaxe. So for that side of town, it's
Mhm.
probably a shorter walk.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I brought this to get planning commission feedback. The next step would be to take it to like a council work session, but I definitely understand the concern. Cars are getting bigger and bigger.
It costs more and more.
Yeah,
So it
and-
really ticks you off when somebody dings your car.
and
yourself. Or
with,
you do it yourself, yeah.
I think, what was it? I have a spreadsheet that I made that shows that every commercial vehicle, maybe not like a dually, like F-350 could fit in an 8.5 space with at least like, I think it's like 9 inches on each side, but that doesn't include the mirrors. So with those huge mirrors, that might be an issue, but like my car, which is just a hatchback, has like 1.5 foot on each side. It's quite small.
Does anyone else have any thoughts?
I mean, it's affecting, what's 13 spots you said in Alpha, or this backlot?
Yeah, mine, just like
So it
taking,
adds 13, sorry.
making some measurements, I think we could add like, yeah, 10 to maybe up to 15 spaces just in the back, not including like on Colorado Boulevard potentially.
That means you have to like restripe every single spot then to get those 13, right?
Right, and I wouldn't expect us to restripe, like go out and
Yeah.
do that work tomorrow, but they restripe it every few years anyway, so in a few years' time when we have to restripe, then that's when we could go back and
And we'll have a parking garage by then, right?
fingers crossed, and that, could mean more spaces in the
That's
parking
kind of on
garage.
the way.
And you think about some other projects, let's say like the Carlson Elementary, whether that becomes affordable housing or something else. Reducing the required width by 6 inches might mean in addition, they could fit another few spaces in there as well.
Or more of something else, like you were saying,
Right.
more housing or green space or anything.
But yeah, parking is at a premium in the city, so I thought it was a reasonable thing to look into when it was brought up.
That makes sense to me. And you're saying that there's other communities that allow all the way down to 8 feet. So we're not even recommending going down that far, so.
Only
it's kind of the
skinny
middle
people
ground of
can
road.
get out of their car when you go down that far.
Yeah,
That's what you
Well,
want, man, you gotta, yeah.
yeah.
And the other thing that we don't have in our code at all right now, and maybe this is something to consider as an alternative or an addition, is like compact parking spaces that are smaller but are striped with compact only or
Mhm.
something to at least fit a few spaces in that way.
That'd be smart, especially in the larger lots.
I would say, look at what we did at the rec center there
Mhm.
and what those spaces were, the size. And I think we worked on that with the homeowners that lived around there too, because of the diagonal parking on the one side.
Yes.
Because my thought is, and this is my personal thought is I would hate to see us go smaller back here, but be able to do it in different areas. Does that make sense? Like we did for the rec center, for when they expanded, they had to have so many parking spots. And for like, if there's something else that expands, or a housing development comes in, and we can use that set of numbers for that and not change the whole thing everywhere.
Sure, so it would be more of like a allowance for flexible standards. Because if you're doing like the rec center or a housing development, you'd have to come in for a final development plan typically, which maybe, I don't know, Nick, how we'd write the code into that, but if that
You
was
know-
what they wanted, like if that was the alternative, could we write something like that in?
I think we did it with the affordable housing down here too, by the post office.
Yeah, I think we could
I think
explore that.
we allowed something with them being able to count parking spaces on Colorado Boulevard, if I remember right. So that might be another one to compare it to too.
Hmm.
Because they weren't able to meet all the parking spots, but
Right, well, and they had allowed, like council and I guess planning commission at the time had allowed, because they did a parking study, a reduction in parking, in part because of the availability of Colorado Boulevard spaces.
right,
Now, of course, like in the downtown, we have the parking fee in lieu program where someone could potentially pay in lieu of, actually providing a space, but we haven't seen that on a large scale. We've never tried it with someone who needs 20 parking spaces. Would we approve a development that's asking to pay $400 instead of paving 20 spaces? I don't know if that would be viable politically, I guess,
right.
because of the impact on parking, but that is an option that we have not expanded to the rest of the city yet, but maybe.
And we'll face that when it comes to us. If it does.
So I'm hearing, like the big, like Kent, you sound like you're in favor of just reducing it. Cindy has a few more reservations and maybe there's a more nuanced way of doing it. What other thoughts?
I mean, I'm definitely in favor of that. I think it'd be very helpful, especially being a premium. And maybe, yeah, maybe there's a middle ground where we make an allowance or variance or something that'll help support that too.
I'm in favor of it. The whole city needs more parking, so if we can expand it to the whole city and have extra spaces down there for the bikers and even though I guess racks and stuff might, but that's length, not width.
That's the way.
Yeah, we ride our bikes or walk down a lot, so I'm not parking down there, so I'm not thinking of my car as much, but it also, the number of people, the majority of people that park there are tourists, right? And so they're gonna park there once and then leave, or park there every so often when they come through, so they're probably not gonna worry that much about it or complain that much about it. So I think it's a smart thing.
Well, and it is the minimum, so there's no reason if we wouldn't actually be able to fit an additional
Yeah.
space in an area, we'd probably just leave them as 9 feet. Because why create like dead space?
But I think, look at the compact thing, because you do see that quite often in parking lots, that, not that everybody pays attention to it. I know, but mine's compact, and they pull in and it's like, okay, that's not compact.
Right.
There are no more spots left.
True,
Hard not to, so.
and it's like,
Denver,
who's gonna take it to you?
Yeah.
Denver allows 7.5 feet width for compact spaces,
Wow.
which are, but I could still fit my car in, even though it's not really a compact car. Yeah.
I still think it out.
Okay, does that help you?
Yes, I'd say that generally planning commission would be in support, but the concerns are, noted. And then we'll see if council wants to move forward, because like I said, we haven't, other than the mayor who brought it to Andy to bring to me, we haven't talked with the council at all about it, so.
I still think with that other fund for parking structures, that property that you and I talked about. And I did mention it to the mayor at one time. Who knows? Okay. Housing updates.
All right, so
Oh, I'm not ready to meeting anymore, it's work session.
We're doing fine.
I'll just keep it moving.
So the big thing I wanted to talk about was this ADU grant program that's coming up at the end of next month. To see it, so there's a lot of funding available to be able to promote ADUs, and we just passed all these code amendments to make it easier to build an ADU, but I've not talked to anyone who wants to build one, and we haven't had a single one approved, the new construction of an ADU since at least 2019. But people from the public and in meetings have said, let's promote ADUs because it preserves character, but gets a few more houses where it fits. So I'm trying to think of ways that would actually work. And the only thing really that has had any headway is I've talked with John Kane from Netherlands recently, and he and Idaho Springs have been working with this My Town AI thing, and they put together this program to basically say, okay, how many lots are like feasible for an ADU? Where you just stick it behind the house or next to the house or whatever. So they have all that data, but it doesn't really help us all that much. And so John had this idea of everyone getting together and going in on a grant, and you can get the county involved or Gilpin County or whomever to like do this big education campaign and go to each house and say like, what will it take to actually build an ADU? Like, do you need money? Do you just need education? Do you need tap fees reduced? Like, what is it? And so that's the only idea that has really come forward so far, but I wanted to brainstorm, would that potentially be a good idea? Should we consider something else like pre-approved ADU plans, fee waivers for things, etc.? Because if we can get some money to promote it, it seems like a good grant to pursue. So I'm just trying to brainstorm thoughts, and we all own property in town, and not all of them would be appropriate for ADUs, of course, but like, what would it take for anyone in this room to actually build an ADU at their house? That sort of thing.
It's interesting, you said nobody's done one since 2019. To me, that's kind of telltale that people don't want them. Or people that do have the properties that would allow them, they're not interested in building one either. It's
I
something.
don't agree with that. I think it could be the people just doesn't know about it. And I really like the idea of the option 4 where people can, we can go to them, the people that actually have the space, we can just go directly to them. I think it's something similar like the Historical Society does with historical buildings, where they reach out to them and they tell them, hey, you know, there's some grants for you to improve your house or whatever. And I feel like it's kind of a similar thing that we could do. Things like genius idea. And I think that mixed with option 2, where we have pre-approved options to show people, you know, this is what you could do. And I think that's great.
I'll agree with that. I think it's probably telling that it stopped right at 2020. I know that my wife and I want one at our house, and we do have appropriate space for it, but there's kind of just, I'm not personally even sure what the first step honestly is. I'm sure I could research it. And I personally, like we all do, have connections here, so I could research it easier than a normal citizen probably. But also 2020, we all know that was a heck of a year. And there's been a few since then. I think it's probably pretty telling that they stopped right then, and might have less to do with people not wanting to and not able to, might be a better reason. So for me, I know that, of course, any fee waivers or anything like that sounds awesome, but even just how to do it, a checklist of what's required by the city. I mean, I could go just convert my shed to something that you might call livable, but I'm sure it wouldn't be a legal ADU. So what's even required, I think, is what I was curious about personally.
Right, well, and thinking of fee waivers, it's like, to Cindy, to your point, if we aren't getting any interest anyway, and people aren't coming to me and saying, please let me build an ADU, or I want to build one, but it's too expensive, like, people aren't coming to me and saying that. It would be silly to do what like Fruta did, or Grand Junction, or Larimer County, where we get a bunch of money to then offset fees, when there's no one here to actually want to do it. But if we could get 10 people like Kent to be like, actually, I do have a space, what would it take? And
So
then
like
say-
the pre-plan, you would be
Pre-plan, the
interested.
steps, education, any of it.
Right.
When I look at the costs of building even a small livable building with sewer and water, like, I don't know what the fees are, but I doubt that they're significant compared to the cost of actually building the thing.
Well,
I could be wrong.
right, I mean, I was looking at this like factory built shed company, they're called like shed something, I don't know, but they build like 300, 400 square foot little detached ADUs, and it's, the cheapest one is like $90,000.
Yeah.
And so obviously cost is a huge prohibition, but if people, you know, can't even come to us and say it's too expensive, like, because they don't know it exists. That's why I think to, you know, also to Cindy's point, if we can get some money to at least see, all right, are people interested? Like, is the hurdle? Do they not know about it, or do they just not want it? Then maybe that is a good use of money, because then we can do a phase 2 where we try to offset costs.
So you're saying you like the option 2?
Well, I think is that the,
Pre-approved ADU plans?
well, I think I like what Uchi had sort of come up with, where we maybe partner with Netherland, or if I can convince anyone else to go in on it, like we get a consultant who comes out and they create like checklists, and then they go around to all the people around Netherland and Idaho Springs and Georgetown and wherever, and say, we run the numbers, you could fit an ADU here, like, let's do it, you know, what's it going to take, and give them all the information and get feedback. And then once we have that feedback to say, okay, this is what we need to do to actually encourage this sort of development, then maybe we can consider, well, here's stock plans for you to do it, and here's a waiver of tap fees, all of that. Because
That's really cool, because we're in a unique situation where we could actually do that, because there's few enough just lots here in general And then certainly few enough that could actually support an ADU, that we could actually reach out to every single one. Like, that's possible to do. That's not possible in other towns.
Yeah, well, and the thought of doing it regionally is that we only have.
Yeah. Still true.
900 houses or something in town, like. Is the state really gonna fund a project where someone goes around just to our maybe 200 houses that maybe could have an ADU? Or would it be better to get 5 times as much money, but then do it a bunch of other places? Unfortunately, I haven't convinced anyone else that it's such a great idea yet, but.
Except for Jonathan.
Well, it was his idea originally. So I had already kind of put together this memo to say, what should we do about it? But then he approached us and said, what if we partner on this? And so I added it in last minute, but I do sort of think maybe it is the best one because it's quite low risk. But if we get a few ADUs out of it, then it's a good return on investment. And if it turns out that only Netherlands gets a few ADUs out of it, then I guess it's still good for the region.
So it's a grant that you'd apply with Netherland, with Jonathan to do, and
I would love to have it be the entirety of Clear Creek County, plus the entirety of Gilpin County, plus Netherlands, and then get like $200,000 to do it. But I don't know if we'll get everyone on board.
Are you working with
They're
them?
smart, they'll do it.
Yeah.
The problem is, so Netherland and Boulder County, they're required to make all the ADU changes, like the state said, you have to do this. Whereas we as Idaho Springs said, we're going to do it, even though we don't have to. Whereas like Clear Creek County and Georgetown, they also don't have to do it, and they've said, we don't have time to like go through that process right now. But I talked to DOLA and they said that they'd be willing to do a free code audit of all of their codes because they might already meet the requirements. And so I'm basically just dragging them along to submit their things to DOLA to see how close they are. And I think if we're able to get them on board, then like Netherlands might even just be willing to lead the grant and write it, and then everyone else just sort of piggybacks on it.
Well, it certainly makes sense to start from the position of trying to learn more. So that we're not saying, well, maybe no one wants any. No, I think a lot of people do. And just to kind of see what is stopping them from just popping up all over. Do people really want to do them? Or is it like Cindy said, nobody even wants to? Having some better feel for the answer to that before we spend a lot of effort making it easier to do when it's not gonna happen anyway, might be really nice.
Yeah, I know there's some places that have been successful. When I was in Summit County, they had about 300 ADUs across the county that had been built in the last 10 years or so, longer than that maybe. And like Denver probably has several thousand of them that have popped up over the years. But we have, I think, in total, maybe 5 in the city, but those are all basically looking into it. None of them were built as ADUs. It's just like this lot happens to have 2 houses on it, and so one is considered an ADU.
And it's not that,
like,
that's surprising. I mean, you're comparing us to Summit where 90,000 to me is a lot of money, right? So
Yeah.
the idea of an ADU on your property, and that's not the full cost of it, that doesn't include everything else.
right.
You're not gonna waive all the extra fees, and so, you know, that's a hefty price.
Well, you know,
But I
most
do
people.
think it's a combination of what Cindy was saying, some people just probably don't wanna do it. But we don't know that until we educate them that it's an option to do it.
the space is so
So-
limited around here.
It's true,
compared to
all
other
the
places,
sloped
too.
lots, it
Yeah.
just makes it tough,
Yeah.
but there are spots where they would work. And you know, if people are building it to rent, then banks will often give you a loan for that. And perhaps the city could partner somewhere there, so, because I mean, me just going to a bank, they're like, whatever, but if it's part of a larger program, maybe that could help with approvals for people to get a loan to do it, that can be covered by the rent.
I'd also be curious if we would have any numbers around kind of stats of what would make this, what would we deem successful, right?
Yeah.
So if we put all this effort in, not just us, but Clear Creek as a whole, Netherland, all of that, and if we get 2 out of it, but we had a grant of 200,000 to educate, obviously it's over time, right? You can tell somebody about something today and then 2 years down the road, they remember and want to do it. So, you know, the long-term impact would be something you look at, but also I think I'd be curious to what our hopes would be for the impact of all of this.
So it sounds like everybody's agreeing
Really
with
good point.
moving forward with Netherland, Jonathan. How are you guys gonna find the time?
Well,
We see.
Cause he's got his hands full too.
Right, well, he has a planner that he can just tell they have.
Pass it on to.
I don't have that luxury, of course, because I am the planner. But that is a great point about what is actually the mark of a successful project. Because if we said we have $200,000, let's just pay for 2 people to build it, then like, well, we just got 2. And if we spend 200,000 to talk to 50 people, but only 2 build it, is that more successful? It's more of a risk maybe, but.
Yeah. Well, I imagine the grant will ask that, obviously, right? Like, it's gonna be part of the grant application is,
Right.
what is the plan for this really?
Okay, does that help you?
Yes, absolutely. I think if you had said, that's stupid, let's not work on it at all, then that would have also been helpful, but.
So grant deadline, February 27th,
Yes, so.
anywhere from 37 to 325,000, grant match 25%. Okay. So would that be 25% each or
Well, I
we
think,
split that too?
I mean, they've never had one. I talked to Dola about this briefly the other day. They've never had someone come together like regionally on this grant program, but it is relatively new. So they were like, wow, that's an interesting idea. But they were like, regionally would work. We've never done it before, but I think we'd have to have some sort of like MOU that sort of said everyone splits it equally.
or maybe not equally.
Yeah,
May not.
Sure.
based on size, all of that, right?
You have to
Number of
come up
houses you
with
have to
some
go
sort of
to.
metric by which
Yeah.
to split it.
I'm sure there'd be some sort of agreement to split the costs.
Yeah.
But yeah, you have to be a supportive jurisdiction like we are, so like, you know, I thought we should go to the housing authority that is, you know, up and running now. And see if they want to manage something like that and just do it around the whole county, but they're not eligible, so it has to be a municipality that kind of runs it. Which is unfortunate. Cause that would be a lot easier, cause they're looking for things to, you know, like potentially spurn development and income and all of that. But they have posted their executive director position again, so the only one who wants to be a housing director, let them know. I'd do it if I didn't have such a great job here, so. Okay, well.
Okay, comp plan?
Perfect, yeah, so I didn't put anything in the packet, I just kind of wanted to give a brief update. And also mention, you know, I had sent out some drafts maybe a month ago or so. I don't know if folks looked at it at all. I wanted to get initial feedback on that, and otherwise just give an update on how things are going generally, I guess. So I guess where would you prefer to start?
I don't think I read it, to be honest with you. So an update? Did anybody else read it? I think I did too, but we're talking a month ago, yeah.
Well, and it was like probably 100+ pages worth of things. So I sent 2 sections to the state to look at. They gave me some feedback, but it was all pretty minor stuff. So I think we're in a making decent progress. Like the state, they're requiring 2 new sections, one's water supply and one's strategic growth, and it kind of analyzes where would it be appropriate to add additional housing or additional development in general. And so I had spent some time putting that together because there's these brand new sections, and we're looking pretty good. Like our water supply, our water capacity of our plant is only at 1/3 capacity. And so doing the numbers, we could add like 6,500 housing units in town and we'd still have water capacity, which obviously won't happen. That'd be 6 times the size of the city right now. But it's good to show that we have the capacity, and the reservoir, notwithstanding the fact it hasn't snowed much, has the capacity to build 6,000 additional homes on the water supply. Strategic growth, we've been looking at, okay, where is it really appropriate? And I think it's clear that the appropriate place for more development is probably the east end of town, more so than the west end, where there's more established neighborhoods. That's what I've heard from the community and from, basically from residents and all that. Like, they don't want to see the area just north of downtown turn into a bunch of eightplexes and townhomes and all that, even though it's zoned for it right now. But people have generally said, we see more mixed use developments, hotels, housing, et cetera, on the east end. We're good with that, I guess. And so, anyway, I sent all that off to the state, and they are now sending it to their consultant who's doing guidance on it to try to use it as an example for the rest of the state, as to say, here's what's good and here's what's bad and things like that, which is, I guess, positive. And so I'm doing that for all the sections. I'm working right now with the rec district on the parks and recreation and open space section. I'm gonna go to their board at the end of the month and see what their goals are, talk to some of the rafting community and see what their goals are and all of that. So I am still doing some outreach, but at this point, I'm trying to just update all the goals. Because things have changed a lot, but we don't have to totally reinvent the wheel, I guess.
Kind of on that, other than the two new sections, what would you say the biggest changes or differences are in this compared to the previous comprehensive plan? What's changed the most? It needed to be redone.
Well, I think on the previous plan, there was a lot of we need to get these big projects started. So it was we have this open space area. We'd love to see some trails built there. And now we're at a point where it's operating and successful, and there's a gondola that's opening at the beginning of the year. Similarly, we had talks about doing the whole downtown plan, which we hadn't done the downtown master plan. That was done 3 years ago. Now we're doing all the planning for all the improvements. And so we have a lot more things off the ground. We've approved the East End Overlay District, which seeks to reinvest in that area of town through more flexible design requirements. And so now I think we're more at a stage of saying, how do we take that momentum and keep pushing it forward appropriately, I guess, because there's been a lot of concerns from the community about this kind of loss of perceived character in some neighborhoods, in some, just Idaho Springs is changing and we don't like it. And so I think, but then you hear from the business community and they say, well, Idaho Springs is changing and it's great and we need more parking to accommodate that growth and we want to see more growth. And so there's these two opposing forces. And so I think that's the big thing that has to be a big consideration in all the sections is how do you balance those two competing arguments, I guess. The other big change is we had no public transit at all that went through Clear Creek County when the last plan was adopted. And now we have the CDOT stuff and we have the roundabout and we have the snow sting, I guess, which is also CDOT. And so we really, in that previous plan, it basically said we should get public transit in Clear Creek County. And now I think the goal is we need to maximize the public transit to make it actually useful for commuters and for visitors and all of those things. So I think our goals are a lot more, can be more concrete now.
It's awesome. We're so nebulous, it seems like a lot of it's gotten done or gotten started. It's
Right.
cool.
Yeah, we have done a lot in 8 years. And, some people would say some of it's good and some of it's bad. Generally, it's,
I think every town, every place hears that. Every
Of course.
city, every town.
That's just
Yeah.
humans.
Yeah.
The one thing I wanted to touch on is that I've seen a lot of plans that was not in our plan initially was this kind of core values discussion. So I went through all of the survey questions and all of the survey results and like conversations I had with people, and they said like, what are the key things that make like Idaho Springs, what are the guiding principles? So I came up with 4, and I'm trying to then kind of tie them into all of the sections to kind of say like, how do these all fit? So like the first one is a historic community, which is kind of obvious, it's very historic, there's a lot of history here. Second one was like a connected community, and that's both as far as like community is tight knit and everyone in this small town together, but also we're connected the rest of Colorado on the I-70 corridor, and that influences decisions. Third one was health oriented, a healthy community that, and so then we can focus on water quality and the environment, but also on recreation. And then welcoming community is the last one, and that's both for residents and for visitors, because we are kind of this tourist community, but also we need to create a place that's good for the people who live here. So that wasn't really in the plan at all in the last one, but I thought these, it's like kind of a draft of what might be these kind of pillars that we want to like hold up when we're thinking future decisions.
I like that.
Absolutely.
So that'd be another big, I guess, change, I suppose, is digging more into like what we are as a community.
That's awesome.
So that's, I guess, the update, and what I'd want to ask as feedback from everyone is what we'd like to see as next steps, as like bringing you things to look at, or like, do you want me to just put together a full group draft and then give you like 2 months and the public 2 months to like be over what's probably going to be several hundred pages of text, or like bring a section every month now and we dig into it, or, more
Are you
outreach.
done with all the sections, do you feel?
No, I've had some trouble on a couple of them getting data. Economic development and tourism has been a little difficult. I've taken it to the business community and asked for some survey results and things like that, and it's been pretty slow going. So I haven't really done anything with that one. And I haven't done much with like our public infrastructure, so like streets and roads and public works and all of that. So I'm still kind of writing those ones, but I think otherwise, in the next month or so, I could put together like a pretty good draft with, and start working on maps and things. And then it would just be photos and formatting, stuff like that.
So you're thinking like go through sections. And then that's kind of the final, but then you'll bring it to the public too?
Yeah, I think once we have like a draft that we say, this is the updated
Right.
draft, give us comments, and then I'd have it on the website, and there'd be like a survey on the website, or like host a public meeting where people can talk about it.
How many sections are there
Well, we have,
approximately?
so in the previous plan, we had like 12 chapters, but now I had to add 2 additional chapters, so I think there's 14.
So maybe each meeting, or if we don't have a meeting next month, we can do a work session or something and hammer out 5 chapters or 6 chapters that we all go through, and just as a group, and see if there's any changes for them. So you can get that, start and finalize all that, and then gradually be pulling it all together to give to the public and not having to go back to us again. I mean, what works for you the best?
Well, I don't want to overload people with like super dense meetings, but I do think we need to have, feedback.
I think we did it that way before. How we did it is we would get the chapters and we would sit just at a round table and go through it, and there wasn't always a lot of changes, more tweaking verbiage and
Sure.
ideas. I mean, I think we've all been kind of involved in it and have heard the conversations where I don't see a lot of things, I know from what I've read, that I would flag as big changes.
And at a certain point, there's no getting around like a dense meeting where we're all just like
Yeah.
a bunch of paper in front of us trying to figure it out. We're just gonna have to do it if we're gonna review it.
Yeah, that's my thought too, is if we have to sit down in one evening, and if it's do 5 chapters, do the first 5 just to keep it moving for you.
Sure.
And if we all have to suck it up and read it and do it, yeah, that's kind of what the role is, yeah.
Well, and I could certainly send it like a few weeks in advance and say, we're gonna talk about these ones this month.
Uchi's got something.
Oh,
But you finish and then I have a comment on, thank you. I'm glad someone noticed.
Was she waving?
yeah, that sounds good. And my ultimate goal would be to have this to council for approval, like middle of the year would be ideal. Cause then it's over a year of, sort of work, but obviously I'm not working on it all the time because there's some other stuff going on. But I'd love to have it done halfway through the year so we can start implementing, stuff going into 2027. So Uchi, sorry I didn't see you earlier.
No worries, no worries. My only comment, well, maybe not only, but if we want to get some feedback from the community, I feel like that ideally it will be in sections, because even just reading those 4, I think, chapters that you sent, it was like a lot. And I noticed some things, but by the time I finished reading everything, I was like, I can't do anything else. My brain is mush. So I don't know if there's a way. I mean, obviously there's a way to, like, tell the community, hey, like you guys were talking about, at each meeting for the next 6 months or whatever, we talk about certain chapters. Like, try to make sure that we publicize it so people can also read them if that's an option for them, and they can also bring feedback ahead of time. Because I feel like if we do this ourselves and then we be like, hey, community, give us your thoughts on this package, I feel like, who's gonna read that? I mean, I think it's gonna be really hard for anybody to do that. So that's one thought. And then the other one is, I feel like there's certain chapters that are like very short and some that are like I don't know, like the history of Idaho Springs, for example. I feel like what are we gonna add to it, right? Like, so I feel like we don't even need to like bring it to discussion. So maybe Dylan can like choose the ones that he actually wants feedback from and go from there instead of having to do everything, without actually needing to. Those were my thoughts.
Well, the background section is definitely the longest section because it's the background to everything else. And the previous plan, like you said, Uchi, has like so many pages of history. And I've tried to basically eliminate all of that history unless it's super relevant, because like we can put that history into a web page, like the history is the history. It doesn't really necessarily need to be in this forward thinking plan, other than referencing to say like the history does influence the future. So I've done a little bit of that as well, but I think my question, Uchi, for you is, do you think it makes sense for us to just like at these upcoming meetings, let's say we do one in like March and then one in like April and May or something, that we like really publicize just these regular planning commission meetings, or would it be valuable to host like a community comprehensive plan thing?
My thought is just advertise it as an open planning commission meeting to go over those chapters, and the public's invited to give their input. And we're still leading it with, here's the changes we'd make. And if they've got valid points they want to point out, and then that's what you can work off of between what we're saying and the public that shows up to do it.
Right, so we can make it like really a open forum of a work session.
Kind of like the ones that I did go to that you did, kind of like that, but
Yeah.
at least all of us are here doing it, not just because they showed up for the meeting.
Right.
It's our scheduled meeting that the public's invited to come to.
The work session. too.
Yeah.
Would you specifically want to invite the chamber and the downtown and the historical?
Well, anybody that, and it'll be online available for them to read before that, and if they've got some input or would like to see something changed or have another idea, then they'll come to the meeting that night and get to be part of the meeting and give their ideas to Dylan to make
But-
those changes or add things to it.
But I can definitely do some like targeted outreach to say like, this meeting, we're talking about our historic
Yeah.
element.
Yeah.
And this other element, so since you're on the Historical Society Board, I thought you might like to know about it.
Yeah.
And for the environment section, like solve and, you know, like aqua and those sorts of things. That sounds good, and what I'll do to break it up a little bit is I will publish like all the drafts online. But I'll break them up into individual sections, so if you like open the PDF, it'll just be that section. Because that's only 5 pages, I can like read that because I care about the environment, but I don't care about transportation or history.
And then if you're talking wanting to do this by midsummer, I would say we should do February, March, April,
Absolutely.
May, yeah.
Absolutely.
It's start right away, not wait till March.
And interleaving the work sessions and the public together sounds imperative to making it to being done in the year.
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, you've got our commitments, right?
Yeah.
Everybody?
Is there any chance of having
Get it
even
done.
tiny amounts of food for the public at this meeting? I know it just increases attendance.
we can do that, and then it would be helpful for you as well. We have a budget for the comprehensive plan that I have not used much, so we definitely have the budget to buy some snacks and sodas. If we have a regular meeting that we think will be like actual things on the meeting, do you want us to get like a comp plan discussion that month?
Well, I think if we're gonna do the comp plan work sessions, they're not meetings, work sessions, it should be just that.
Right.
But if you have agenda items, maybe the comp meeting starts at 6:30 and we do those agenda items at 6 PM? Or can people be here at 5:30 and do the agenda items at 5:30 and let the comp plan start at 6? I know people this time of year, I think people prefer to come from work, go to a meeting, then go home instead of coming back out at 7 o'clock at night. I mean, I don't know.
Right,
It seems like you have more people when it's at 6 o'clock than at 7 o'clock.
sure. And I don't know of any lengthy agenda items that will be anticipated, but you know, if we had, we're gonna talk for at least an hour about these 4 sections, like you probably don't wanna sit through a public hearing before doing that.
Right.
Yes. And if we don't hit it like a July 1st approval, it's fine.
We can hit it.
You know, if it's like September.
If you get it done.
I'm all good.
Personally, I'd be up for doing the comprehensive plan meetings like aggressively and really working on it. That way, if we get delayed on stuff, we have front loaded the work on it some. And then if there's other important agenda items that come up, maybe even a second meeting. I mean, I don't know, deal with it as we come to it, but it seems like the comprehensive plan is important and we know we're gonna be talking about it. It might be an agenda item, so we should just attack it hard.
Well, that makes sense, I suppose, especially if we're concerned about like a future development or something coming in the interim that, like, if we have the new plan in place sooner rather than later,
Yeah.
then we can reference that instead of the one that's 9 years old.
Yeah.
All right, well, I'll get to it. And then if anyone, I still have those sections with you. It should be in your inbox somewhere. So if you want to start digging in, we'll probably still start at the beginning and work our way through. But I might have to skip a few that I'm waiting on more feedback or what have you.
Hey Dylan, sorry, because the tiny noise is really loud over there. The only thing I noticed is that on chapter 3, when you have the vision statement, I think it is cut off. It's like, I don't know exactly, I think it looks like, it was like a screenshot or something and it's not complete. That's the only thing.
Yeah, that definitely could have happened. There's some like formatting stuff that's pretty weird in there right now, so sorry about that.
No worries. I figure you'll catch it later once you're revising it, but I figure I'll let you know.
All right, let me go back and look at that. It's for like the vision statement stuff. All right. Okay, fantastic. Well, then expect
Next
something in the next few months or in the next few weeks. And I'll send out in advance so you have more time to like dig in. Because that will probably make things faster. But if you don't look at it ahead of the meeting, no worries. That's what the meeting's for. All right, well, thank you.
Design requirement.
All right, so we've kind of talked about this in the past, and I wanted to tee it up just sort of once more. Kent wasn't able to attend. If you recall a few months ago, I come in and kind of said that there's some other places that do these sort of points ranking systems or things to develop guidelines that better address development in town. So you say like, we're getting this new apartment complex that's proposed, like, sure, it meets bare minimum, but like, couldn't we be doing more with sustainability or, like parking or affordability or those sorts of things? Like, are there metrics we're missing in the code that we
Roof
should be
designs.
working on? Whether it's like architectural design, and that comes from like, a lot of people in the community complained about how the new apartments look, even though they meet our requirements. So like clearly, maybe like, do we need to revisit those? But similarly, we don't really have anything in our code about sustainability. There's building code stuff. But do we want to, focus on that sort of thing more? And I wanted to give, because this sort of came up from talking to Kent. So Kent, I wanted to give you a little bit of opportunity to speak to what you were trying to get at, if you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Bill. Yeah. And we've kind of talked about it before too. So I'm sorry I missed the meeting. It was like 5 months ago now. It's wild.
Probably
But-
was.
Anyway, just it felt to me like we get a lot of development where as part of the process, they come in front of us and they have a plan and look at it and it seems to follow the laws, or maybe we use our own kind of gut feeling or personal values to make a decision. Hey, could you change this or that? Or I heard from a constituent, they're worried about this, but it's all very wishy-washy. And there's been some negative examples lately, like you just said, like 4 Points went through, and there's, for agree or don't agree, personally, there's been a lot of complaints kind of after all the decisions were made. And so it seemed to make sense to me that if we had some sort of guiding principle, something like, or maybe even the exact core values that Dylan was talking about for the comprehensive plan, to help guide not just approval or denial, but which parts of a design we value or want to emphasize or not. Like, not every project, in fact, probably no project, can be affordable and sustainable and historic and walkable, but which ones do we value more? Which ones do we say like, oh, hey, well, you want a variance or you want a whatever. Well, you don't need any of our rubrics, so you're not gonna get it. But if you were more this or that, well, we could work with you. And that kind of gives us also individually just a little bit of coverage on like, well, it's not that, Chuck didn't like you. It's that, well, you didn't meet the rubric, so we couldn't give you a variance. So having that kind of documented made sense to me, but also it could be a way, like he said, to encourage more development that the community would like, but it could also be something to base on whether we give a variance or another treat or incentive to a developer, as opposed to just they were charming and came in and charmed us, I don't know. Does any of that make any sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. I have a couple questions.
Of
First,
course.
what's the biggest complaint from the community about the new development?
I think
Because it was
it's,
approved, right? I
Yeah.
mean, by multiple, the council, everything, they didn't change anything during the process of building, did they?
No.
no, I get what Kent's saying, because when you look at it, when they came to us and it's on paper and it's talked about and
Mhm.
stuff, yes, it looked great.
Yeah.
It was all acceptable and stuff like that. And now when you see it, it's looking better and it's gonna grow on us. But you also look at it, I know I do when I drive by it and think that I wish we would have probably made them have more levels of roof lines. So it doesn't look like a big rectangle. So I think that's kind of what you're saying is maybe we have a list of things that we would like them to meet. And I don't think you can say, okay, it's gotta be log this or river rock this, because that's decor type stuff, but maybe, if you're gonna have a high peak here, I just look at that and think the roof designs could have really broken that up and made it look a lot more attractive.
So would it be code?
Well, and that
Because
is
you can't
part
force them to unless it's code.
No,
right?
and but you
That's
can
the
give them
incentive
the,
stuff.
right,
Okay.
you can give them the guidelines and say, hey, this is what our
Yeah.
community likes. I mean, you look at the clinic and so many people were opposed to that clinic. And, we drive by it every day and I think it looks great.
And I personally don't have anything wrong with the 4 Points building, but that's just me personally. I think it looks perfectly fine.
Yeah,
Not a problem.
I just would like to have seen it broken up a little bit more.
Yeah, and I've heard various things
Sure.
equivalent to what she's saying, that not all about the roof, but the
Yeah.
equivalent, like fairly nitpicky things, I
Yeah.
would say. But, and the kind of thing I'm talking about wouldn't have anything but like roof lines in it.
Okay.
But maybe it would have we could say we have these values and one of them is fits into the aesthetic of the town.
Mhm.
And so then we can look at it and it's like, oh, these roof lines don't really fit into the aesthetic of town, or they do, or whatever. Just, but that conversation between town, the developer, and excuse me, between the public, the developer, and then the city itself, it got pretty contentious. And I mean,
Yeah.
it seems like it also sometimes got personal. And so it might be nice for us to have a documented, like written, this is why we made the decision. This is why we approved it. I mean, beyond just code and stuff. But,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not. I just wanted to start the discussion. I know this is pretty nebulous, but a lot of people have had people just always have complaints. Everybody here knows that, but, people ask, could it be more affordable? Could it have been more historical? Could it have been more this, that, or the other? And I don't know, it felt like if we had some sort of guiding principles as a planning commission or town of what we're trying to achieve in general by allowing or disallowing different projects and which points we consider more important than others.
Yeah.
That might be a good thing to have as a decision-making tool.
I like the word, the guiding
Yeah.
principles.
Well, and even if it's not forced, it's the idea,
Yeah.
it starts the conversation with them. So,
Yeah.
most developers, I would hope, don't want to disrupt something in town, right? They're building it to become part of the town.
Mhm.
The more they're liked, the better it's gonna go overall. And so saying upfront, okay, we're excited for you to be here. This is what Idaho Springs is about. We
Right,
want you, we welcome you.
And
Would you be willing to, as you're building this, consider
yeah.
like these ideas?
Yeah.
and even
here's some
before you
incentives.
spend a lot of money on design,
Yeah.
here's the stuff we're more likely to approve,
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and it could have been, instead of looking like three humongous big rectangular buildings, those facades could have been made Edwardian or Victorian or whatever and looked like separate houses.
Yeah, kind of like some of
Yeah.
the.
But that
houses
was the
around.
first big project that had been done in Idaho Springs and ever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
I think once it's all
You
done,
live
it's
and
gonna
learn.
blend in.
Well,
It's just shocking to people.
And
is
once
all.
they get the landscaping in, that'll help a lot.
Yeah. I like the guiding principle that, yes, so you could come up with a list of stuff. But I think we've done that before too, with when you've met with people where we've said, okay, we'd rather see this, and they've come back with it. Because I think they did that with the clinic, where it did work.
Right. To be fair, that even happened a bit with 4 Points and with other projects. I'm just talking about kind of like
Yeah.
codifying them, documenting them, and if there's gonna be kind of core principles in the comprehensive plan, then maybe this is kind of subservient to that. a little
Well,
bit.
and this was gonna be something that I wanted to bring up, and maybe Nick, you have a role to play in this question, is like, for a rezoning, for a rezone specifically, we have a question that's asks whether the proposed zoning is conformity with the comprehensive plan. And there's a few others like that, but a key one that isn't is the final development plan. And so, and that's where you get at like the design elements and like what actually goes into it doesn't meet the code. And so the question I sort of have is, is there a way for us to, with final development plans, put more emphasis on the comprehensive plan? Because I do think we could build out this priority guiding principle thing into a comprehensive plan discussion, put it into the plan, and then for anything that references the plan as a criteria for approval, then we have the leeway to like make it a policy to say like, we are going to focus on this part of the plan equally to like, is this like a land use that's appropriate? The final development plan though, doesn't have that as a criteria. And so to like Judy's point about roof lines and bulk and massing, does that mean that we should have a bigger discussion to say, what are our guiding principles? Then let's actually make the code amendments that make those changes so it can apply to the final development plan. Because I could imagine from a legal standpoint, if we create this kind of nebulous thing where we grade people on a rubric, it becomes less of like less black and white and becomes more like based on our personal opinions, which doesn't work in a public hearing often.
And you can't
But,
enforce it. I mean, you can give incentives, but you can't actually enforce it. So
Right,
if they can build
and
it.
so
they
if
want that
we want it to be just enforceable, then what do we need to do for like the things we care about, sustainability, like Edwardian, Victorian architecture, et cetera? Like, what do we have to change? And then let's work on changing that in concert with creating that comprehensive plan goal. But otherwise, do we want to, if that's not the case, what incentives would we actually want to give people that would like get them to actually comply? Because I do agree that in general, if a developer comes in and says, what do you want to see architecturally? Like, there's some communities where people are like, I have this vision for what my apartment complex should look like so that I can demand this price for this condo or whatever. But often if you say, well, we really care about this Victorian architecture, people will do their best to comply as long as it doesn't cost them a bunch of money. And so that could be as easy as us putting together, just like a checklist guide that says, this is what we as a community care about. So I think it kind of depends on what our goal is do we want to make the regulations alter them to hit our priorities, or do we want to make it more of this incentivized thing? Or can we require more of the like comprehensive plan goals with final development plan?
I think we already can, honestly. Looking at this design setting, and it speaks to design in different areas of the city, East End, commercial downtown, West End, community gateways. And it says development shall be designed to be compatible with the comp plan recommendations to fit into the setting of the city and protect scenic view corridors, historic district, and historic landscapes. And since this is part of the zoning code, I think you could probably rely on this as developments move along.
Okay,
So maybe it's kind of just defining what that means to us. What does comply to the design aesthetic mean? Right?
So it does sound like we could focus it on the comprehensive plan efforts and make that part of it as like during our land use and community character chapter, really dig into these are things we care about as a community and we want new developments to meet. And maybe that's the way forward because then we don't have to actually do any code amendments.
Yeah.
This is kind of a naive question, but would that just be with brand new developments, or take Carlson if they do anything pretty severe to it, would it also include
They're talking about scraping.
Yeah,
But
so
even
it
if
would,
it
I mean, that would be new, but even if there's an existing building and they adjust it pretty significantly with that, will you,
It'd be anything that needs a
Apply.
building permit. Right?
Well,
Ish.
anything that needs like a final development
Yeah.
plan, which
There's a lot
I
of
suppose
things.
if they were going to, so there's a caveat with that building. But,
yeah.
and that is that they're within 2 blocks of the historic district, which means that there are much stronger guidelines that we can hold them to. Than if it was just like on the west side of town. So that's positive because there's a nexus between the historic district where we can say, we want to, prove to us that it complies with the downtown commercial district and our historic character, which is like Victorian era, Edwardian area, like all of that. And so like that one, I think already is pretty well open for us to be able to demand.
But if it didn't happen to be within
Right,
If
two
it
blocks,
didn't
That's an
happen to
example.
be within that, let's say someone wanted to redevelop,
well, an empty building across from the rec center, maybe.
yeah, that like bluish,
Yeah.
greenish,
Yeah.
like that building, I suppose. Like you said, I'm gonna just gut the inside. And I'm gonna, if they were doing major renovations to the outside of that building, it would probably trigger a final development plan. I guess is the short answer.
And I think yeah.
I have 2 questions. One on the Carlson property, is there any way to not allow them to tear that building down?
If you could convince the school district to list it as a historic building,
I know well, your wife was one of them, that, hey, that is an historic building, even though it's not designated that way. You know, do what you want to inside, leave the outside. And the other, when you talk about sustainability, are you talking about like solar panels and insulation and that kind of thing, or?
Any of it, but sustainability also, I'd say means affordable, like, is the building existing sustainable, like you'll be able to keep getting rents because it's affordable. Those are the types of detailed nitty gritty things that we could get into. I was just more thinking that, to your point about Carlson, I've just had a discussion with so many people so often. They ask me, why in the world did this happen when no one in town wanted it? Their words, no one in town, but certainly it was unpopular, fair. Project X. And at some point, I just have to say something like, well, I mean, at the end of the day, it was the developer's private property and they met all of the legal requirements for their redevelopment. So we can't really stop them in the same way that we can't stop you from redoing your shed when you do all the proper permits, you know, when there's good reason behind that. So I was just kind of thinking, is there some way that without just putting up a bunch of roadblocks in front of needed development like housing and other things, is there any way that we can have a little more democratic control over what gets built in town?
And
That's what I was thinking.
I think the comprehensive plan is a good place
Yeah.
to put it
Yeah,
potentially,
sounds
because we could, to the point about Carlson, say something along the lines of adaptive use is preferred
Yeah,
if there's something that has historical value. And then the good thing about the comprehensive plan is it's very broad. And so like, I could come in and say, I want to build a slaughterhouse at Carlson Elementary. And we'd say, well, that doesn't meet the land use preference for it, but it meets these 10 other goals. So we still think it generally meets the requirements of the comprehensive plan. Like that's the kind of good thing about it is, like, we say, you know, that building could be a good, you know, should be residential only, but if there's a really compelling, like the zoning would allow it to be commercial and there's a really compelling goal that it achieves, like we could still prove it because the comprehensive plan allows it. So there is a little bit of gray area, in my opinion, of tying it to the comprehensive plan. And so like if Carlson came in and said, we're just gonna scrape it, we could say, well, it doesn't really meet our, like, we have this goal of adaptive reuse. It could still go forward and it could still be improved because they meet our housing goals. It's suitable for that sort of thing. They're providing affordable housing. It meets design standards for a new building, but at least it allows us to like point at that and say, this is something we care about. How can you better address it?
Yeah, it starts the conversation.
and even with the developer, it's just, there's just a little more strength to pointing to something in writing and something as official as a comprehensive plan or something, instead of just saying, well, Dylan said. you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Or the plan commission.
Or the
just
planning
didn't
commission
like
said,
it.
yeah, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
And I personally feel like if they left the Carlson School, they could tear down the rest. You know, leave the original building, tear the rest of it down, because it's,
Well, you know, that's another reason if we're gonna do this through the comprehensive plan, really, to get to work on it. Get it done and in, because I mean, that's moving forward, other projects are moving forward.
Well,
And we want them to move forward, right? We don't want
Yeah.
a bunch of empty buildings.
No, that's
So
not
it's
what I
that-
mean.
Oh, I know.
Exactly.
It's that balance of, I agree, right? Like, we don't want to tear down. We'd much rather repurpose buildings, generally, I would hope.
Mhm.
But we also don't want just empty buildings sitting right in a prime spot for years because we're
Exactly.
so, not picky is the wrong word, but I don't know, too
No, picky is a
narrow in
great
our
word.
great, you know, like, we're never gonna please everyone, and so there has to be some.
You're exactly right. That's what I was thinking
Yeah.
a minute ago when I was like, not even, nothing could be sustainable and affordable and whatever, you know?
And no matter what you do, they're gonna be naysayers and lover, and it just won't
Always.
just, right, so.
right, but at least it opens up the opportunity for us to say, these are the
Yeah.
expectations we've set through this community-oriented document.
Mhm.
And like, it's up to you to sort of prove that you considered these when you put your project forward.
Right,
And it's not going to meet everything, of course, but this is it's a 200-page document. Of course, it's not going to meet everything, but if it can still meet a lot of those goals, then you could, with a straight face, say like, it met all of our zoning requirements, and here's the 5 ways it meets the comprehensive.
It also gives the community a say, right? So if somebody
Exactly.
really wants to say they don't want a project, well, were you there helping us develop the comprehensive plan? Because you had the option to. You
Yeah.
had the option to give your voice and say what you care about. Were you there? If not, I don't
well,
know.
that is maybe the biggest complaint I hear from constituents about planning and development is that no consideration of the locals is made and just developers are just allowed to build anything. And so and things like this, that's not true. First of all, I don't believe that's true, but I understand why people feel that way sometimes.
Yeah, when your voice isn't
And
heard.
this is a way to, in addition to other things we do, try to address that.
I went to a lot of those meetings for, is it 4 Points at the football field?
Yeah.
The pre-planning meetings with the developer. And the neighbors were all there and nobody expressed any kind of concern. I was like, well, then you get what you get.
Mhm.
Well, and I've had a lot of people complain like, well, I didn't know about it. And I say, well, there's a 300-foot like radius where we send you a letter and there's a sign on the property and it's in the paper and they're like, yeah, but I live over here, but I still care. So I have been, like, when there's a public hearing or public meeting, I've been posting it at like the Frothy Cup and at the rec center and other places around town, just because maybe they'll see it. So it's like, people still probably will say they didn't see it, but you can only do so much.
Post offer.
Do they? they've never had a place where I can hang. something.
Yeah,
They
they
have
do.
space.
They've got a,
Oh, they do, it is
Yeah.
self-serve.
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it's a good spot.
You can always put them up at our shop too, people look.
Yeah, that's fair. Uchi, anything from you? I know it's harder to contribute on the TV.
I mean, I agree with all the discussion. I definitely agree. We have the criteria for approval already, so maybe on certain cases, maybe we decide at some point, depending on our conversation with the comprehensive plan, that are things that we want it to be more specific or more detailed. You know, one of the things that comes to my mind is, I feel like the biggest thing for me in the 4 points is like the scale. Maybe that's something that we can figure out how to address. At the same time, I doubt there's another property that anything like that could be built. So maybe we add it and just never gets used because, the train already passed on that one. But yeah, maybe just trying to get more detail on the specific things that we feel like are important, like style or looks, or maybe even by neighborhoods. I don't know, stuff like that.
That makes sense. We are here at a good time, doing this comprehensive planning process. I think that is maybe the appropriate way
Makes
of
sense.
building that in, and I'll give it some thought. And I think it probably fits well into our just like core principles slash background slash, sort of introductory section. And so I'll work on that over the next couple weeks and then send it out. And then it can kind of be a dual purpose meeting of going over the comprehensive plan, but then revisiting this conversation. That works for everyone.
Right on. Thank you.
That's all I wanted. That was good.
Sweet.
Okay,
Thanks, Sean.
it was early.
All right, thanks, Uchi. And if anyone ever wants.
Good night, Uchi.
Anything else to the agenda.
Thank you, guys.